Tammie Rubin. This is my exhibition, I Pick Up My Life at Galleri Urbane. The title of this exhibition is the first line of a poem by Langston Hughs. And the narrative of that poem is talking about their intention to physically move their location. So they're part of the Great Migration. So they're moving from a southern area to a rural area. And it talks about the Black experience that over 6 million Black Americans had between 1919 and 1970. And in this exhibition, I'm using that as a kind of framework to talk about how to gain autonomy and freedom, and thinking of that as in physicality, but also like metaphysical and also spiritual. And I'm doing that through sculptures, drawings, installation, and also a mural within this space. These sculptures are from my series, Always and Forever, Forever, Ever. And they are cast conical forms in porcelain. And the forms are from everyday objects. So as a sculptor, I'm looking at the everyday objects that surround me, that are both domestic and industrial, and seeing this pattern of these conical forms that I'm using over and over again. And so as you look for the forms, there are a variety of references, and those references are from what they're cast, which are things like safety cautions, funnels, snow cones, but then also like what are the reference for the conical form itself, which is wide ranging. So everything from the hood of the Ku Klux Klan to papal hoods of the Brothers of the Nazarene to West African headdresses and also dunce caps. So thinking about how like this one form has this multiple meanings behind it and the slippage behind it, and how do those different references change over a time period. What they all have in common is that they give the sense of both uniformity, this idea of fraternity and anonymity, and then both pageantry, but also it portends some sort of like danger as well. So there's both the this impulse to want to explore and get close, but also to kind of fall back. And I like this push-pull with the sculptures that I'm making, so that there's both a sense of familiarity, but there's a sense of dislocation about the way that we think about those various references. The forms themselves are cast that are porcelain, like I said, but then as you get close, there's detailing on the surface. So I really think of this like drawing, three-dimensional drawing. I am referencing historical maps that are everything from transportation routes to maps of where like lynchings have taken place, where African Americans have moved, where they move within the United States to and from, and things that are kind of mundane, like transportation maps. So how do people get from one place to another? Why do people locate from, why do we have a concentration of certain places like Chicago and Philadelphia, from where you have more African American people? So thinking about like the historical way that routes determine kind of autonomy, and putting that into a more kind of abstracted form. So as I use the visual information from those maps, the abstraction takes place as I actually embed them onto the pieces. The work behind me is new work. It is a series of plotted drawings that I'm calling the Citizen series. As in my other work, I'm using maps, family images, historical data points, and using that as a way to think about abstraction, while also thinking about the body and how it is striving for freedom, but also being like restrained. So these are personal to me. I'm using images of my parents for Chicago Home 1 and 2, and overlaid of their image on their wedding day is the Chicago map, the redlining map, which corralled African Americans into only specific neighborhoods where they could get mortgages. And thinking about how these historical, institutional, racist policies affect generations. So the fact that my parents' home would look identical Chicago bungalow to a neighborhood that was, blocks away, but not being able to have the same kind of equity. And so thinking about this way that these physical structures and these philosophical structures cause like limitation. This mural is Monkey Wrench, North Star, Flying Keys. And it is, the mural contemplates American freedom by referencing Underground Railroad quilt patterns. Each of the symbols represents a different way to strive for freedom, to organize freedom. From everything from getting ready, to finding allies, to it is time. And so I'm using these quilt patterns, these symbols of how to take power and autonomy, and equating it to our modern times, our contemporary times. This idea that you're still always looking for ways to escape, looking for allies, looking for how to prepare. The contrast of the blue and the yellow seems significant to me, and I feel like the blue is a very kind of spiritual color. If we think about things like Yves Klein's blue paintings, he always talked about blue as a plane of spirituality, or a place that you could fall into. And so the contrast of that against the yellow creates kind of an illusionary sense as you stare at the mural. On top of the mural, what we have is prayer fans, and these prayer fans are made out of masonite. And I think of the masonite almost as a skin color. The brown of the masonite is a skin color. And then I'm using a technique where I'm using decal collages of both family photos and also found images to talk about this narrative of migration, of resistance, of storytelling, of narratives, of family, of joy, of history. And the prayer fans float against this mural. The work behind me is called Breach. It's an installation of survey flags, also called stake flags. And they're just ready-made flags that you would buy at a home building supply. And they become, for me, symbols of the various ways that we think about the representation of the flag. So the flag as claiming space, staking space, of surrender, of country, of citizenship, of thinking about how to navigate through the world by staking your own kind of claim, whether that be physical or spiritual or metaphysical. And as you walk through this kind of narrow passage, you get to a place where you are kind of overwhelmed by the number of these flags that are breaching into the space itself.